out of sight. It took us over an hour to climb up the same hill. That's how fast they are. I did it with their hands behind their back and a pair of flip-flops. We relocated back in those trees. We moved. And we relocated. We set up kind of a triangle formation. I was at the very top of the mountain, 30 feet above me. Ash's right here, Danny's here, and Mikey's here. I pulled my cap down to get some rest, so I don't know how much time went by, but I hear Mikey signaling. And then the smell hit me in the face. I could smell. I was like, roger that. My rifle was right here. I cradled it, and I just rolled my head up like that. The first guy I saw had an RPG over each shoulder and an AK-47. There was about 30 or 40 guys standing right above me, all postured up, looking down like this. And then coming down each ridge line was a dozen or so guys surrounding us. Right above me, there was a tree, a big tree. And I saw a guy with a black shroud and an AK peek his head around, look straight down into us. I threw my weapon on fire. He pulled his head back around. I could hear him. You could hear him screaming up there. And I looked underneath my armpit at Mikey. I was like, get on the clock. We're fixing to get it on. I turned back around. Out of my peripheral, I could see these guys moving and setting up, but I just held on that tree and waited. And when he pulled his head around that tree again, I dumped him. And when I dumped him, it unleashed hell on our left flank. Small arms fire, no rockets or anything like that. But, I mean, it was so loud. I mean, I've been in plenty of gunfights, but nothing like that. I was screaming at the top of my lungs at Mikey, 12 feet, 50 feet below me, couldn't understand or hear a word I was saying. I don't know how much time went by. I don't ever look at my watch when I'm in a gunfight, but I was dug in pretty good. I had 3 or 4 little trees right beside my head, and bullets flying above me and hitting the dirt underneath me and everything. Well, those trees started taking rounds, and eventually one of the rounds broke through the tree and hit me in the gun, in my rifle. Well, when I leaned off to see where I'd been hit, luckily it didn't hit me in my weapon system. It only hit me in my magazine. So when I dropped my mag to load another one, I was looking down, and Mikey was giving me the signal to fall back. Now my pack was wrapped around my calf. When I reached down to grab that shelf, that little step I made, crumbled and fell apart. And it was like somebody opened up a trap door underneath me, and I just fell right out of it. It started sliding. And I'm not really sure what my foot hit, but it stopped me dead track. And as soon as my chest came up over my hips, I started flipping out of control and pinballing in those trees. And when I hit Mikey, I was upside down and backwards. My legs came up over his shoulders, and I busted him right off the top of that perch he was on. I mean, I hit him full speed, all 272 pounds of me back then, and just boom, and we both started ragdolling in those trees. And I would reach out and try and grab something to stop myself, and it would just flip me in a different direction. Finally, after 150 meters of that, we broke through that tree line, and then the sun hit us, and it was wide open, and I remember flipping 3 or 4 times. And that grass area was actually boulders and trees, and the grass had just grown up in between. And when we hit that, I landed on my back and broke my back. Mikey landed on his face and crushed his face. I sat up, and that's when they hit us with the RPGs and the mortars and everything else they had. So our world just started blowing up around us. When we started to move, it was like running an obstacle course through that stuff. You couldn't see what you were stepping into. We finally got down, and where the ridge lines came together, there was 3 or 4 big logs laying in there. We flipped into those, gained our composure, regrouped, turned around, and started to engage the enemy. Axe was running down our left flank towards us. I could see him out of my peripheral. He took a round, and they shot him in the back. Came out his left rib, dropped him on his face. I didn't see him until he crawled into those trees that we were in. Never said one word to us. He was bleeding from the mouth, so I know he'd been shot in the lung. I was the medic. It was my job to patch these guys up, so I had to keep a running note. But just reloaded his weapon and turned around and engaged the guys who shot him. And Danny was still up in the trees where he had come from. And then we were fighting, keeping these guys off of us. They were trying to come down on top, and we were trying to push up, but they would just shoot us and push us back down into the hole. And then you see Danny's body flipping through those trees, flipped out of there, did 3 or 4 flips, hit those rocks, we thought he was dead. We made a movement to go get him. He sat up. We gave him cover fire. He tried to come down, he didn't make it all the way. I crawled out, I grabbed him, I drug him back, and I bellied him, and I flipped into those trees. I put him against that tree, and I said, please tell me that you got that radio call off. Please tell me that somebody knows what's happening to us right now. But it was so loud. I mean, I was right here. He couldn't understand a word I was saying. I was screaming my head off. Finally, he just lifted his hand up like this, and his thumb had been severed. It's hanging right here. And I said, okay. I pushed his rifle into his chest, which means it's time to fight. And he turned around, and we engaged. Now, they pushed past us. So we had to come off that. And this was the biggest fall that we took that I remember. It was probably 35 to 40 feet. There was another ridge poked out. There was a bunch of shrubs and bushes and limbs and logs stuck down in there. Well, we just fell into that. We started breaking through all that stuff. And when we finally hit the ground, we landed on top of each other and got stuck because of our gear. And they just started firing down in there blindly. Danny got shot in the throat and underneath the clavicle. Mikey got hit in the back. and Axe got shot in the leg. We untangled ourselves, we moved out of this draw, into the draw, and then we just fanned out, started pushing down the mountain. Now the gun battle lasted for over 3.5 hours, maybe more. In the beginning of the gunfight, if you were somewhere and you were fighting, and rounds started coming in, well then naturally you would move. What would happen is you would fall. At the end of the gunfight, if you were somewhere where you weren't falling down that mountain, and you were shooting, you were engaging the enemy, you would not leave that position until you got shot, because the fall was worse. And I know that sounds crazy, but every time you fell, you broke something. I don't know. It was a crazy turn of events. But to back up a little bit, about 1.5 hours into it, I was dragging Danny. I'd pick him up, I'd try and carry him, but I'd fall on top of him. I mean, I fell on 3 or 4 or 5 times, and I remember one of the last times I fell on him, he pulled me down as close as he possibly could. He said, "Please don't do that again." So I grabbed him, I chunked him off something, I jumped down there, I'd get his rifle, we'd fight, we'd have to get out of there, I'd drag him. We got to an area, both his femurs were broken, he had a compound fracture on his tib fib and been shot 4 times that I know of, and both his lungs were collapsed. So we got to an area where I was holding him like this, and there was a dead drop, about 200 feet, straight up the side of this cliff. But then there was a way that there was a little spot that if we landed on it, we could slide down around this boulder. It was the only way we could go. I was like, "Look, man, I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to take the brunt of this fall." When we hit the ground, you spread everything you got. Start grabbing for rock, bushes, leaves, whatever, to keep us from sliding off that dead drop. And when I picked him up, I spun him around like this. And when I did, I spun him right into a bullet. Had my name on it, guaranteed. And hit him right in the back of the head. Killed him. And when it did that, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for his dead weight. I had my arms underneath me. And he totally collapsed underneath me and pushed me in a different direction than what I thought I was going to go. And I face planted into this rock and smashed my nose through my face, and then I bit my tongue in half and I swallowed it. And that totally incapacitated me. I crawled around that rock and I was on all fours, trying to heave that thing up. Got in there, finally got it out of there. I put it in my teeth. Sorry, did I get your attention? Grenade! I put it in my teeth and bit down, and so I wouldn't swallow it again. I looked up, I could see Danny's shoulder. There was obviously a lot of blood all over the rock. I crawled up, some stuff happened, and I got shot out of there. I caught up with Mikey. He asked me where Danny was. I was like, "He's dead." So we made a movement to go get him. The only problem was it was so steep that once you fell a certain distance, you couldn't get back up the way you came. And we tried. We tried so hard. You crawl up 2 feet and slide down 6 or fall off some. That was the most frustrating thing I'd ever encountered. I was on the left side of the mountain firing laterally across the canyon wall with a group of guys that were hunkered in pretty good.